All right, folks, thank you for your time today in reviewing the Rapido Monthly update for August 2024. My name is Megan Weldon. I'm a Rapido product manager and happy to be here with you today. This session will follow the familiar format of these monthly updates. First, topics of the Rapido community, followed by highlights of this next monthly release, which will be the September release. Some time for a frequently asked question, followed by time addressing any questions that we can address today that you share via the Q&A or the chat feature. Okay, topics of our wonderful Rapido community. The first topic that I want to address today is an update where we're at in the enhancement cycle. So if you are voting, you have until August 30th to submit your first round of votes for the enhancement cycle. And this timeline that you see in front of you came out to you via the Rapido listserv. So if you aren't engaging on the Rapido listserv yet, I will also share a link at the end of today's session so that you can get connected to the listserv. But as you can see, we're in the first round of voting and you have until August 30th to get those votes in. If you've got questions regarding your voting or getting your ballot in, the wonderful working group who sent this information into the listserv has also provided an email address for you to contact with your questions to get the support that you need. The next topic for our Rapido community is a Rapido success story that comes to us from the Library of University of New England in Australia. The wonderful team at this library shared with us how Rapido has supported them. First, they addressed the struggle that they were experiencing, and with Rapido, they saw an opportunity and have met that opportunity to save money, reduce manual handling of requests, and decrease turnaround time for requests. And you can see this great info chart on the right that Rebecca Higgins at University of New England, Australia put together regarding the successes of Rapido at their institution and their goals that they see in front of them. A little bit more on that. They highlight a success of seeing a close to 50% decrease in their staff time spent on digital resource sharing, and they're working to get up to 75% of all of their requests experiencing automation. One of the exciting things that they present from their library is due to this automation, they are looking to expand their resource sharing service to user groups who've not previously had access to resource sharing. And they attribute this time savings as a function to supporting this. So I'm sorry, folks, I'm seeing a comment in the chat that they're not seeing any visuals. Can somebody chime in to acknowledge if they are seeing the screen that is shared? Okay. So I am seeing from the chat that others are seeing the screen that is shared. So for the person who isn't seeing slides, that might be unique to them. And I apologize. I know that can be really frustrating, but it doesn't seem like it's a widespread issue. So thanks, folks, for chiming in there. Appreciate it. Okay. So this is just a story from University of New England, Australia that highlights the success they've seen with Rapido. If you want to read more, these are linked, and I'll share the link later on so you can see other library success stories with Rapido or share them with other folks who might be asking or are curious. Additionally, if you would like to work with us to share your story, we're happy to do so. Please reach out, and we would love to promote your story of using Rapido at your library. Another opportunity for our team to hear your stories. We have 3 in-person events coming up that I just want to point out. If you will also be there, please reach out. We would love to see you if we get the chance to be in the same place at the same time. So if you're going to be at the Igloo conference, we will have members of our team there, and we would love to see you and connect in person. If you'll be at the Northwest ILL conference, we'll also have members of our team there. For the Igloo conference, you'll get to see Judith. For the Northwest ILL conference, myself and Mike Richens will be there. So we'd be happy to spend time with you if you want to reach out and schedule any one-on-one time for our in-person opportunities there. And then the SIRS conference, the Southeast Resource Sharing Conference. I will be in attendance and, of course, happy to see you in person if you want to connect while we're all in the same place at the same time. Another topic for our Rapido community, you might have already seen, we've started to publish the roadmap for 2025. And I say start because, as we previously acknowledged, the enhancement cycle is underway. So the enhancements that come from the community's voting will also be added to the roadmap so that we'll fill out accordingly. Additionally, we've only got items from the first half of 2025, so there'll be further items published for your review. But as you can see, we are sticking to Rapido pillars of the importance of connecting, of our end user experience and our staff user experience, and have developments accordingly for the first half already planned for 2025. Okay, thinking about developments, we've got a few great ones to share with you that are coming to you in the September release. So there are additional pieces beyond what I'm sharing today, but we are going to speak to the main highlights of this release. First up, we have one related to the theme of optimize. One of the things that I think about when I think about optimizing is analytics and how I can use analytics to get information about my services, how they're doing, how they're performing. So our next development for September is related to analytics. So if you are following release notes or monthly updates, you saw that in the August release, there was a similar development from the borrowing perspective. You had some new visuals from the borrowing perspective in the data visualization. But with the September release, you'll see something similar. So if you're in analytics and you go to the catalog, you find your way to the shared reports, you'll find a Rapido folder there. Within that folder, there's a data visualizations option. And from that data visualizations option, you'll see this new piece from the September release under the tab My Pods as a Lender. So this is a big screenshot, but don't worry, I'm going to zoom into each of these little sections and let you know what you'll find there. So one of the first things you'll see there is My Pods as a Lender. So as a lender, the various pods that you're participating in will be represented, and you'll see what the turnaround time experience is for those different pods. So you can see as a lender, are your turnaround times in alignment with what the pod expectations are? So it gives you a little bit of insights for your decision making and understanding of your participation in those pods. So there's a fun visual there within that data visualization. Additionally, as a lender, you'll now find a chart here that says My Fulfillment per Pod. So you see that you've got your different pods listed. This is just an example environment. And you'll see that the number of requests has its own column as well as number of requests, and from there we get the fill rate per pod. So for this example, we have a library participating in the California State Network pod, the other pod, and the US West pod. Across those different pods, you see they have a 93% fulfillment rate as a lender for the California State Network pod, 97% fulfillment rate for the other pod, and an 83% fulfillment rate for their US West pod. So you can see of the requests that you're getting per your different pods, what you're able to actually fill from those pods. Then, not to be confusing, but a slightly different kind of percentage regarding your different pods. Here we have a pie chart, and though on the last screen we saw that we had a 93% fulfillment rate for our California State Network pod, we see that for this visual for lending across the pods, our lending to the California State Network is making up about 61% of our overall lending volume. And I believe for the other, on the last slide, we had a 97% fulfillment rate for that pod, but we're seeing that that is actually making up 33% of our overall request volume. So just a few new visuals under that data visualizations board with my pods as a lender for you to see how you might be engaging with the different connections as a lender in those pods. Our next development is related to our theme of connect for connecting with and interacting with your partners. This development actually came from the idea exchange process, so thank you to folks submitting ideas into Idea Exchange. I do want you to know that they are reviewed and our team does interact with those, and we have added this one accordingly. So something to know about this one is the idea exchange item came in that sometimes they have partners who are missing an address. And this causes challenge when they're supplying a digital request because this isn't visible information to them. Well, now out of the box enabled is an alert that will alert staff to let them know that if they are on the lending side of the equation here and trying to fill a digital request, they will see requester email empty and can act accordingly to get that field populated for continuing to work with that partner. But another part of this development is that although you might not be engaging with filling the requests from the individual request status, so you might not see the alert. There's another kind of component here that will give you visibility. So this alert will help you right if you're working from the request and you go to your actions menu to fill it, but some folks work from the shipping screen. So if you're working from the shipping screen and you're uploading the request information or the content to fulfill the request, you might not be seeing that alert, in which case there's this handy pop-up that will also notify you if your partner is missing an email address, so you can work on that before filling the request. Okay, the next theme that you're familiar with Rapido is a way to personalize, and in this case, personalizing your workflow and options you have available to you there. So with the September release, the shared barcode functionality will be an option available to you for interactions with all of your partners. Previously, to be able to use the book's barcode as opposed to the external identifier on the paperwork, borrowers were reliant on lending partners to enable this feature to enable the barcode information to come through. This posed challenges for borrowers because it was reliant on decisions by other libraries. So now you'll see that if you're a borrower who likes to use the barcode as a part of your workflow for updating your requests as opposed to using the external identifier to update requests, you can do so by on the received items screen that you access via fulfillment resource sharing, then receiving items. You can toggle identifier type to barcode as opposed to external identifier, and you can use the book's barcode for updating the request. And you still, of course, have the option to utilize the external identifier, but now you have that choice and flexibility within your workflows. Okay, our next development also came from the idea exchange process. So it came from colleagues like yourself. This is a really great development. It is the option to override local holdings set via your Rapid ILL partner. This may not be a configuration choice that makes sense for all libraries, so I'll try to give you the context that you might need in order to understand or make the decisions at your institution. However, if you have questions beyond what we kind of go through today, let's connect in one of our one-on-ones with your library so that we can see if this configuration decision supports and aligns with the way that you like to work at your library. So where you'll find this new option to you is under Fulfillment, under Partners, if you find your Rapid ILL partner in that partners list, and navigate to the Parameters tab of that partner, you'll now see the Ignore Local Holding checkbox available to you. So for some context, where might this configuration come into play? So first, right, your request is interacting with or comes about via your display logic rules decisions at your library. So your display logic rules kind of shape what your end users are seeing, when they're seeing their offers, etc. Perhaps you're a library that allows Rapido offers on locally held items. So maybe you allow your end users to place book chapter requests or article requests for your own content via the Rapido tiles. Or maybe you don't, but that's kind of planting the seed for where this might make sense to you all. Then where your request interacts with is your other customizations at your library. Maybe that is your mediation rules or your copyright rules taking effect on that request. Then staff may be engaging with those or not, but they can end up going to the request, then go to Rapid ILL. So in the automation that takes place with Rapid ILL is happening behind the scenes. One of those automation steps is a rapid ILL holdings check. Rapid ILL is referencing against what you've defined as lendable holdings. And then if it finds that request is something that is held locally, the local holding status is applied. So what might that look like? We have a request here in Rapido with the local holding status. So requests at this status, staff might be taking a few different workflow pathways depending on how they navigate this and depending on maybe what their mediation rule or copyright rule customizations were they have in place. So perhaps they are going to the fill locally action and they're uploading a file. Or maybe they're going to the fill locally action and they're creating the lending request. Or maybe they know that they need to override the local holding status to release it to their Rapid ILL partners. So this kind of decision point really comes into play depending on what mediation rules are in place at your library. So let's think about what that might look like and where that would kind of come into effect. So perhaps you're a library that has a mediation rule with either the self-owned and available or the self-ownership check in place. This example here means that if that request comes in and then your customizations come into play, such as this mediation rule, it's going to stop that request for staff to be handling it. They then can fill it from their borrowing request, or they can do that create lending request action under that fill locally menu that we just saw to move it to the lending side for fulfillment. If they cannot fill it, so for whatever reason, maybe the book that they need to digitize a chapter out of is actually misshelved and they can't find it at this time, so they need to update the item to missing and move this request out to be filled by their partners. For this mediation rule, maybe their escape label is borrow okay, so they release it to Rapid ILL. As we saw in that kind of stream of events, Rapid ILL is going to do a local holdings check and update this request back to the local holding status, in which case the staff probably will need to do that override local holding action, which is a redundancy at this point. So if this workflow feels familiar, or if you're engaging with a mediation rule like this at your institution, this ignore local holding configuration may make sense for your library. Alternatively, or additionally, if you're using a mediation rule for self-owned and available or self-owned, and you have the action of fill locally in play, this may also be another instance where you would want to use this configuration. So perhaps you have the fill locally action in play, in which case your mediation rule is automatically assigning your library as the lender to that request. Thus, then when you are in your resource sharing sets as a lender, maybe you've got a set of defining what things are being requested from your own library to fulfill and what things are being requested from your partners. And if you are unable to fill that request and you need to hit reject, like you would do in any lending request that you need to reject, it's going to Rapid ILL, and Rapid ILL is doing that self-ownership check or that locally held check, and you'll get that request back at the local holding status, in which case your staff would need to perform that override local holding action to get it back to go out to Rapid ILL. So there's a lot of nuances there, and I understand if you have questions or you'd like to connect to understand it a little bit more in the context and the way you do things at your library. But in summary, this configuration place is in place now. It's an option for you to choose. It may make a sense under other conditions or workflow preferences, but it really does make a lot of sense for the folks who have a borrowing mediation rule in play to check out what borrowing mediation rules you have in play. You'll find them under configuration, resource sharing, Rapido rules, borrowing mediation. And if you have a rule with self-ownership or self-owned and available, um, you may want to connect with your colleagues and see if this ignore local holding check configuration is a preference to you to reduce the redundancies in their workflow so that they aren't having to override a local holding after they've already acted on the request via the mediation rule. Okay, a frequently asked question for today, and then we'll see if there are any questions that you would like to have considered for correspondence today or follow up. Okay, a recent question I received is how do I change the order of my set facets? So this may come into play for you if you are frequently making sets for your institution, or perhaps you like to facet on use the facets regularly in finding a request and you are finding that you're having to search often or scroll often to a particular facet and use it more often than others, in which case you can change the order that they appear in the list to streamline your process to make it a bit more convenient to you. So under your Byron requests, you'll see that little gear icon under the Save as New Set option. That icon opens a menu, a customization menu. Within that customization menu, you'll see the facets customization option. That selection then opens up the list of your various facets, and you can see here that you can drag and drop them into the order of your preference. You could also deselect them if for whatever reason you didn't want a particular facet visible to you. This customization is, again, unique to your user, just like your sets can be. So this is changing the display for your individual user experience. It isn't changing it for your library colleagues. So if you've made the changes and that you're happy with, so for example here, we moved status to be the very top item, whereas Rapido indicator is the top item by default. You can apply those changes and you'll see the changes come into play at your institution. So again, here we have Rapido indicator, then labels and activity status as the default order of the facets. Maybe as a user, you use your status, your labels, and your creation date more frequently for your faceting and making sets, or when you're searching for particular requests. So you have that option available to you. Okay, and then, as always, thank you so much for your time, and I welcome follow up conversations and questions. If you don't yet have my email address, it's there for you, and happy to connect with questions from today or questions um, at that come up at a later date, or if you're needing to have a one on one with your library, we can connect that way as well. So I will stop sharing screens so it's a bit easier to engage with anything you have in the chat, grab links that I acknowledged I would share with you today, and post those into the chat while also seeing what questions have come in. All right, here's links from today. They should be in the chat now available to you. Okay, so I see that they did make it into the chat and looking for questions. So you'll see the list of enhancements for voting, the link to the Rapido listserv if you aren't getting connected to the listserv, and then release notes covering today and a bit more than what we spoke to. Okay, and then I see a question regarding release notes, a great question. So they say in the release notes at the bottom of the monthly update where it shows resolved issue, is the issue resolved for the institution that submitted the ticket or everyone? So the expectation is that it should be solved for everyone who was experiencing that same issue. If you find that after a release comes into play, comes out, and your instance of an issue is not resolved, please put in a ticket. It could be what we worked on was not quite the same issue that you were experiencing, so it might need additional review. So if you're seeing that those additional resolved issues should fix things for your library, great. And if you find that they are not, please put in a ticket so we can see what nuance might be different for your library. Okay, I see a question regarding when does the receive with the barcode start? So that will be with this September release. So coming up here soon. I'm sorry I don't have the date off the top of my head, but that's available on our documentation when the monthly release hits. So with the September release, you'll start seeing the receive with barcode as an option for you. All right. I think those are all the questions that I can answer in the chat that are in the chat that I can answer today. I see a couple outstanding items that are really specific to the institution. So if you can email me and we can connect about your specific experience or questions, I think it'd be helpful to have a little bit more context to know the nuances at your library so we can have best information for you. Okay. Thank you everyone for your time. Take care.